Old School RuneScape is about to receive an entirely new island. But this isn't just another location created by Jagex. Wyrmscraig is the first play design island in Old School RuneScape's history, and it will launch next week on July the 29th. It brings a new quest, a repeatable boss, a completely different Slaying Master, 2 new skilling activities, unique rewards, and most importantly, it brings gold. So here is everything you need to know before setting sail for the island of Wyrmscraig. The story behind this update is already pretty unique. At the beginning of 2026, Jagex held a competition where players could design their own island for Old School RuneScape. There were more than 1400 submissions, which were eventually reduced to 4 finalists. The community then voted, and Wyrmscraig, designed by a player known as Gnome, was selected as the winner. Since then, Jagex has worked together with the original creator to transform the concept into a real Old School RuneScape update. That makes Wyrmscraig more than just another expansion. It is basically an example of what can happen when a community idea is developed into official game content. But a good story behind an update doesn't automatically make the content good. So what will players actually be able to do there? Wyrmscraig is a remote island that requires level 62 sailing to access. Once you arrive, you will be able to explore the village of Archery, a settlement whose inhabitants have somehow managed to survive in the island's extremely harsh environment. The islands appear to have a darker and more mysterious atmosphere than many existing sailing locations. It isn't only supposed to be a place you visit once for a quest either. Wyrmscraig has been designed with multiple repeatable activities, meaning players should have several reasons to return after completing the main storyline. That storyline begins with a new quest called Fallen from Grace. Fallen from Grace will introduce players to the island, its inhabitation, and the mystery surrounding Wyrmscraig. Jagex is keeping most of the actual story details hidden, which is probably a good decision. Quest releases are much more enjoyable when the entire plot hasn't already been explained in a development blog. What we do know is that the quest will eventually lead to an encounter with the Mad Angel. After completing the quest, the Mad Angel becomes a repeatable boss that players can continue fighting for unique rewards. Jagex has discussed the rewards, including a new weapon, teleport options, and a boss pet. The exact value of the boss will obviously depend on its final drop table. If the normal loot is too weak, players may only fight it for collection log slots and the pet. But if the fight is enjoyable and the rewards are useful without becoming overpowered, the Mid Angel could become a popular mid to high level boss. It will also be interesting to see whether the encounter is generally difficult or becomes another boss that experienced players completely solve within the first few hours. One of the most interesting parts of Wyrmscraig might actually be its new Slay Master, Mr. Mortimer. Mortimer is intended for high-level Slayer players and requires either level 70 Slayer and 100 Combat or level 99 Slayer. Unlike traditional Slay Masters, Mortimer will not simply give you one random task and force you to accept it or spend points skipping it. Instead, he will offer multiple task choices. That means you will have more control over what you kill without completely removing the random nature of Slayer. After completing a certain number of tasks, players may also begin receiving task modifiers. These modifiers could provide bonuses such as increasing Slayer experience, additional Slayer points, improved clue scroll rates, or a higher chance of spawning superior Slayer creatures. This has the potential to make Slayer streaks feel much more rewarding. It could also reduce the amount of time players spend constantly skipping tasks while trying to get one specific monster. However, the system will depend heavily on balancing. If the task choices are consistently bad, players will return to their existing Slayer Masters. If the choices and modifiers are too powerful, Mortimer could make every other Slayer Master irrelevant. Finding the correct balance will be extremely important on this Slayer Master. Wyrmscraig isn't only focused on combat though. The island will also introduce a new crafting training method called the Golem Crafting. Players will begin by mining a new resource called Sunstone. Sunstone Mining uses a momentum mechanic designed to reward active and rhythmic gameplay, rather than simply clicking a rock and waiting. The mined Sunstone can be used to sculpt golems. Players can also dress the golems using furs obtained through Hunter. The activity is intended to provide an alternative to traditional crafting methods such as glass blowing. This one is really good for Ironmans as well. That could be welcome changes because crafting training is efficient, but it isn't always the most exciting skill to train. The important question will be how much attention the activity actually requires. A more interactive training method can be fun, but only when the additional effort is matched by reasonable experience rates. If golem crafting requires constant attention, while giving worse experience than existing methods, it might struggle to keep players interested after the launch. And finally, we have goat hunting. Yes, this is a real activity. Wyrmscraig apparently has a rapidly growing goat population, and players will help control it by herding goats into trap pits. The activity becomes available at level 60 Hunter and is intended to act as a stepping stone between lower level methods and activities such as hunting red and black salamanders. Players will receive hunter experience, goat fur, and goat horns. The goat fur can also be used during golem crafting, creating a connection between the island's two skilling activities. There's also a new goat pet called Mr. McGroot, and let's to be honest, the pet alone will probably keep some players hunting goats for hundreds of hours, if not thousands. The activity sounds ridiculous, but that is also why it fits to old school RuneScape. This is a game where players spend thousands of hours hunting giant monsters only to become more excited about receiving a tiny goat that follows them around. Overall, Wyrmscraig looks like a surprisingly large update. It has quests for players interested in lore, a repeatable boss for PvM players, a new slay system, 2 skilling activities, multiple pets, and a completely new island to explore. More importantly, the different pieces of content appear to be connected. Goat hunting supplies materials for golem crafting, the quest unlocks the boss, and sailing is required to reach the islands in the first place. That should help Wyrmscraig feel like an actual region instead of collecting of unrelated activity placed in the same location. But the update's long-term succeed will depend on 3 things: the experience rates, the rewards, and whether the content is actually enjoyable or if it's another rune crafting skill. On release day, almost every world will probably be packed. The real test is whether the players are still visiting Wyrmscraig several months later. So what do you think? Will Wyrmscraig become one of the best selling expansions in old school RuneScape, or will it be forgotten in 2 weeks after release? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more old school RuneScape news, guides, and update breakdowns, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the new island next Wednesday.